with Christianity, you see more of a move away, I would say, from the idea of the state. As Christianity becomes more about the individual, the religion itself tends to fragment like it did with Protestantism until it just fragments right to the point where every individual is their own church. And then you have no continuity and no tradition.
That's what's happening with what's happening with gender right now, actually.
My feeling, I'm writing a book on this right now, actually. There are certain principles that obviously undergird Christianity that are from the Judaic tradition. I mean, that clearly, the first
it's like a manifestation of the prophetic tradition, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's essentially an attempt to merge Jerusalem with Athens. Is I think the Book of John is the most obvious example, using the Logos as sort of the unifying feature, and writing the whole thing in Greek, right? I mean, that was not the lingua franca of the time. That was not what people were speaking, except in educated circles. So all the Judaic principles, things like a God involved in history, a God who cares about individuals, the notion that you have a choice between good and evil, so choose good, and so that you will live long on the earth, right? All these things were taken forward into Christianity. The major distinctions in terms of Christianity versus Judaism are the idea that, and again, it depends on your interpretation of Christianity. Early Christianity sort of suggested that history had ended with Christ. And then in later kind of iterations of Christianity, that was moved beyond, right? It wasn't that history had ended. It was that Christ would come back when history had reached its logical progression. The progression of history didn't end, but original messianism was, this is the Messiah, we're done, right? History's over. It was a millennialist religion.
Right. That's what.
So there's no second coming for the Messiah. I mean, makes sense, right? Because he didn't come for the first time, right? I guess that makes sense. So like this Christian second coming is going to be like, when that happens, it's going to be like the coming of the Messiah for the Jews.
It was that Christ would come back when history had reached its logical progression. The progression of history didn't end, but original messianism was, this is the Messiah, we're done, right? History's over. It was a millennialist religion.
Right. That's what very few people think that now.
That's right. So, so this is why I'm trying to distinguish, brands of Christianity, because obviously there's serious differences, even in basic root level, between Catholicism and Calvinism and Lutheranism, and all these things have different iterations. So, my very strong belief in free will and my actual building of a moral system, and Judaism is building a moral system on the notion of free will, obviously runs directly counter to, for example, Calvinism.
What is the Jews' take on going to heaven? How does that work? Right? Because they don't have the second coming of Jesus and the judgment day and then everybody goes to heaven, right? Because that's New Testament stuff. What do the Jews believe regarding to that?
Catholicism and Calvinism and Lutheranism and all these things have different iterations. So, my very strong belief in free will and my actual building of a moral system, and Judaism is building a moral system on the notion of free will, obviously runs directly counter to, for example, Calvinism. Right? Calvinism suggests that free will is chimerical and there's no basis for it, and that God grants you grace based on what he wants to do. So it depends on the brand of Christianity, but I think that overall the conflict between Christianity and Judaism in large measure is, especially in the early conflict, was political rather than ideological in a lot of ways. It was a new religion attempting to establish its own footing and was angry that Jews would not join this new religion and leave behind tradition. I think that there are certain ways in which Christianity...
The Christians were angry that the Jews did not leave behind their tradition. Weren't the Christians the one being persecuted, though? Was it the Christians that were angry that the Jews didn't decide or to follow, or was it the Jews that were angry that the Christians had changed?
To establish its own footing and was angry that Jews would not join this new religion and leave behind tradition. I think that there are certain ways in which Christianity, like, for example, the main distinction between Christianity and Judaism that people usually make is that Christianity is a grace-based religion and Judaism is an acts-based religion, meaning that Judaism says you sort of earn your way into heaven, right? You earn your way toward a better life. And
okay, well, that makes sense why the Pharisees acted the way they did, right? We were talking about how Jesus is a big picture thinker, right? And what were we talking about specifically? the keeping of the Sabbaths, right? Keeping of the Sabbath, and Jesus healed somebody on the Sabbath, right? And according to Jewish law, healing somebody on the Sabbath is a violation of the Sabbath, right? But Jesus looked at it as, why is the Sabbath there in the first place, right? Are we not here to do good? Are we not put on this earth to do good and to help those around us? So, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Same thing with, he was talking about, they were talking about, how you have to wash your hands before you eat bread, and you can't touch the bread with dirty hands and stuff like that. And if you partake of the bread, you're getting dirt from your hands into your body, and then that's going to defile your body. But then Jesus was like, nothing you put into your body is going to defile you. What's going to defile you is if you behave incorrectly, if you have bad character and you're a bad person. So again, Jesus takes a step back and looks at the bigger picture and goes down to the root core of these issues, right? So it makes sense why you have one acts-based and one grace-based. It makes sense, right? If something's acts-based, you're going to focus on the act. And by focusing on the act, you might lose the bigger picture. After some time, you might forget, why am I doing this act? And because you're so absorbed in doing the act, right? And that's where the Pharisees ended up, and that's why they did what they did and treated Jesus the way they did.
Is that Christianity is a grace-based religion and Judaism is an acts-based religion, meaning that Judaism says you sort of earn your way into heaven, right? You earn your way toward a better life, and Christianity says if you believe, right, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. If you believe, then you're good. But the truth is that Christianity sort of backdoors the Judaic view by saying, if you really do believe, then you're going to act in these particular ways that demonstrate your belief.
Yeah, well,
right?
there's this weird paradoxical relationship between the idea of belief in Christianity, the belief that Christ came to save everyone from their sins, and that all you have to do is admit that and you're redeemed. Like, there's symbolic truth to that would take a long time to unpack. But there's also an injunction that goes along with that to imitate Christ in your life.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like,
I feel like a lot of these distinctions are almost, some of them are almost a little false. I mean, meaning that they're either Christian misreads of Judaism or Jewish misreads of Christianity. And that when you get to the root of it, I mean, this is what Maimonides says, that there are significant differences between Judaism and Christianity, but his view of Christianity from a Jewish historical point of view is that Judaism was never bound to convert billions of people around the world, but Christianity was, specifically because we have a lot of crap we got to do. I mean, Jews have we have 613 commandments.
Yeah.
We have to keep kosher. We have to do all of these things.
I appreciate you doing
Holy.
a lot of them for me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm taking care of it. Yeah, I'll transfer over the points in the afterlife.
I assume someone's
I'll give you one of my
it.
afterlives. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that Christianity ends up doing a lot of those same things that, there were supposed to be stark distinctions, just under a different guise. So when it comes to this is why in the modern world, when the discrimination between
But I mean, that's an important distinction, though, right? One is doing acts in order to gain salvation, right? And the other is doing acts. Is that doing acts because you love God, right? Is that what it is, right? Because if they're an act, if Jewish tradition is, I mean, the Jewish belief is that if it's acts based, right? Your God told you to do these things, and you're doing them, and by doing them, by following God's laws and His commandments, you're gaining favor in God by obeying Him, and then you obtain salvation that way. Versus the Christianity viewpoint is Jesus died for our sins, and we have already obtained salvation, and we are following His laws and His commandments because we love Him. Right? So it's two very different mindsets, and it is, in my opinion, it's very different because that's like that foundational. It's a foundational difference, and from that, from there on, like, so many things can change because it changes your outlook on how you view things. Even though you're going to be acting in the same way because you're both doing the same acts, you're both following the same laws, but the foundational reason is different. So I feel like that's why it's important.
From Christians toward Jews largely has ended. I think that what you're seeing is this tremendous confluence between particularly Orthodox Jews and observant Christians on matters of values. Because once Christianity in the late 20th century, in the mid 20th century, in America more broadly with Christianity, because American Christianity is very different than European Christianity. Once there was an idea that
what is European Christianity like? How is it different than American Christianity? Let me know if you guys know down below.
Jews were not the enemy to be converted, but maybe you still want to convert me, but we're not going to come at you with a knife. We're going to come at you with a book.
Yeah.
And that we share a common framework for how the world is supposed to work. You just may not agree with the second half of the book, right? And then I think that's created a pretty good working relationship with. This is why I'm struggling to come up with what are the significant differences. And so I need a Christian to tell me what is the significant difference. I can argue with it.
My question,
because I know
Jesus, the view of the Messiah, that's the biggest difference. Because like you said, we follow all the same laws and rules. I mean, the Christians have, when Jesus died, like it stripped away all the ritualistic laws, right? But we still have that same foundational belief system, right? It's that the main thing that's different is the reason why we follow those laws. And the reason why is because of Jesus. And so that's the main difference right there. Ben Shapiro, if you want to know the answer, that's the difference right there.
Half of the book, right? And then I think that's created a pretty good working relationship with. This is why I'm struggling to come up with what are the significant differences. And so I need a Christian to tell me what is the significant difference. I can argue with it.
My question,
because I know my own religion better than I know Christianity.
My question has been, I don't know if the role that the state plays in Judaism and Christianity is the same, because I'm not sure what to make of what I would say is the Jews put a tremendous amount of emphasis on the state as a mechanism for salvation, something like that. That might be the symbolic idea that underlies the establishment of Israel. And I would say that in Christianity...
Do you mean the nation, or you mean like the government?
I mean the nation, but then it gets tangled up with the government, right?
Right. This is a distinction that Christianity is a universalistic religion, right?
Yeah.
The idea is that in the kingdom of God, everyone is Christian, basically. And Judaism is not in one sense, but it is in another, which is that God identifies a nation that he treasures as his own, and he has a special relationship with that nation. But Judaism is not exclusivist with regard to who gets into heaven. So there's this basic idea in Genesis that there are commandments that are given prior to the giving of the Torah, right? That there's what we call the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7.
When do Jews go to heaven? I really want to know that. When do they go to heaven? When the Messiah comes, he's going to take them to heaven? I was under the impression that the Jewish Messiah is a political figure. Right? I don't know. Let me know.
That are given prior to the giving of the Torah, right? That there's what we call the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 commandments that are given to the sons of Noah, meaning all mankind. And these are things like no murder, no idolatry, no adultery. They basically mirror a lot of the 10 commandments. And so the idea in Judaism is that it's almost like a priestly caste. God chose this specific group of people to be a light unto the nations by demonstrating what a godly lifestyle looks like if you dedicate every aspect of your life to God. And then he said to everybody else, I know not everybody else is up to this, and in fact, Judaizers are supposed to try and turn away converts, but you can still get into heaven. The idea that we are trying to force anyone into being Jewish, that's not
okay. So you can still get into heaven if you're not Jewish. That's good to know.
Nationalism without the conversion.
You can think about that psychologically as an attempt to both manage the preservation of group identity.
But that's crazy that they turn people away from being Jewish, because not everybody can handle that pressure, I guess. Because I found it always weird, right? Like God had a chosen people. Like, did he favor a group of people over the others, even though he created everybody? Like, he did horrible things to the children of Egypt, having killed their firstborn, right? And hardening Pharaoh's heart in order to show his wonders. Like, I mean, the Egyptians were still God's creation, So, but like having and then so you're having a favorite amongst your own creation is, I don't know. Maybe I'm understanding it wrong. You know, God works in mysterious ways. Maybe I'm not understanding Him correctly.
That psychologically as an attempt to both manage the preservation of group identity. So that would be culture, a cultural
Right.
identity, which has some utility, and also to be able to coexist with others
think
who
that's
are
right.
doing things in a different way.
And again, Judaism
about
has
to say,
had
that cat
a
wasn't
long
always there.
history of just like every other religion, of sort of evolution on this stuff. Right? Like when you read the book of Joshua, there's actual forced conversion that happens in the book of Joshua. But by the time you get to early Christianity and midpoint Judaism, right? Because Judaism is a lot older than Christianity, then you're already talking about Jews who are not looking to convert people. They sort of want to live in their own state. They don't want to bother anyone else for the most part. So the idea of like a tidal wave of conquering Jews going out, I mean, even to think about it now is hilarious, right? Nobody thinks about it.
I mean, they did quite a bit of conquering, and right, they struggled to get their land. So, but I mean, by the time they got their land, they're like, you know what, we're just gonna stay here. We're not gonna bother with anybody else.
That way, except if you're a conspiratorial nutbag. But it's but
The Inquisitions usually work the other way.
that's right. So
yeah.
so
So would anything that you might have heard Ben just say, would anything jive with a fundamental belief that you have that would cause a problem? You know what I mean? Like,
This is hard though, because according to what I know, Jordan Peterson isn't a Christian, right? I've seen videos where he's like on his way to finding his faith and learning about Jesus and the relationship. So this is hard. You have like a hardcore Jew versus somebody who's not really. I mean, it's not really a versus. They're just talking. But the guy representing the Christian side is not really a Christian. So.
So would anything that you might have heard Ben just say, would anything jive with a fundamental belief that you have that would cause a problem? You know what I mean? Like cause a problem in society.
Well,
or
I
something.
think that one
Ben looks taller over here than I've seen him before.
potential problem that's worth discussing, but it would take forever to discuss it, is the relative role of the individual versus the state. I mean, you see this argued out in the prophetic books in the Old Testament.
Yes.
I mean, there's the Jewish state, and it's sort of the central player in some sense, but there's clear evidence that it can become corrupt, it can fall away, and that a prophet who's an individual has to step forward and revivify it, right? And so there's tremendous emphasis on the utility of the individual. And you see that in Judaism, I would say, overall, it's a very cohesive. It promotes in-group cohesion, let's say, but it also allows for individual expression in a very interesting ways, because there's tremendous emphasis in Jewish culture on learning and articulation and mastery of ideas, and so that provides this space for the individual to flourish. With Christianity, you see more of a move away, I would say, from the idea of the state. Now, that's not necessarily without its troubles. One of the things Jung pointed out was, well, as Christianity becomes more about the individual, the religion itself tends to fragment, like it did with Protestantism, until it just fragments right to the point where every individual is their own church. And then you have no continuity and no tradition. And the Catholics were kind of a bulwark against that. But I do think that there's a discussion to be had about the relative role of the individual
That's what's happening with what's happening with gender right now, actually. That makes a lot of sense.
redeeming the world, let's say, versus the state in redeeming the world. And I would say the Christians come down more strongly on the side of the individual, and the Jews come down more strongly on the side of the state.
Yeah.
Now, like, I'm willing to be corrected about that, because
Yeah.
I've never actually been able to have a discussion with anyone about that. So I don't know what you think about that.
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I think the idea of, in Hebrew, Am Yisrael, like the idea of the nation of Israel being paramount, and when you pray in collective terms. You don't pray in individual terms. Everything is done in terms of anachnu, in terms of we, praying as a group, right? You're supposed to pray in a minyan.
So how do
not
you
really
both
by
square
yourself.
that away in your own ways? How do you square that away as someone
Because
that
there's a lot of
believes
play
in
in
the
the
individual?
joints.
Yeah.
There's a lot of play in the joints, meaning that, so for example, to take
Okay. Let's say someone who is a Jew, right? His parents were Jewish, right? He was born in Judaism, but he was like abandoned, like Mowgli in a jungle, right? can he have a relationship with God as a Jew? Right? Because it's not, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I mean, he obviously can have a relationship with God, but as a Jew, like how strong is like the state, like they're saying? How important is that?
There's a lot of play in the joints, meaning that, so for example, to take the most obvious example, if you want to talk about the power of the Jewish state in sort of biblical context, there's tremendous argument between whether a kingship is a good thing or a kingship is a bad thing in the Old Testament, right? I mean, it says
Kingship
like
kingship?
Samuel warns the Jewish people, if you take a king, here's what's going to happen. It's all going to suck, right? And then they form a kingship, and things suck. And so there's a strong case to be made that kingship was not actually what was wanted, because you have an entire period of just judges, and the judges are legitimately just individuals who are trusted by the people, but then they can be supplanted at any time by another judge who's not from the lineage. So so when we say that group identity matters in Judaism, it matters to the extent that you're following God's law. But if you stray away from that, the idea, I think Judaism has always said that what you do is what makes you part of the group, not what you are. So Judaism has a weird dichotomy in it that's largely driven.
What you do.
A weird dichotomy in what makes you part of the group. From that, the idea, I think Judaism has always said that what you do is what makes you part of the group, not what you are. So Judaism.
What you do is what makes you part of the group, not what you are. So Rachel from Batman is going to have to completely disagree with that, because it's not who you are underneath, it's what you do that defines you. According to Jews, that is not correct. It's what you do that makes you part of the group. That's what
you do is what makes you part
Jake
of the group,
Gyllenhaal's
not
sister
what
should
you
have said.
are. So
was it Jake Gyllenhaal's sister in the first one? No. That was Batman Begins, right? Is that Katie Holmes? I don't even know.
Not what you are.
Rachel,
so
though,
Judaism has a weird dichotomy in it that's largely driven by exigent circumstances, which is the idea of biological Judaism versus the idea of religious Judaism. So I care very little about biological Judaism. Like when somebody says, somebody such and such is Jewish, Noam Chomsky is Jewish. Like, so what? I really don't care. And I think that most Orthodox Jews, basically biological Judaism, or your mom was Jewish, which is the way that it works in Orthodox Judaism, is sort of the entry ticket to being Jewish, meaning you have to either have converted in, or your mom has to be Jewish in order for you to become
so you
fully
can convert
Jewish.
in.
But the practice is what matters to me more than anything else.
Speaking of the Lexus, where did the 50 grand come to just drop?
Oh, Cordy gave it to me for
cat is
blowing
happening?
away Cobain. Oh, I can't believe I just slipped up like that. Oh.
50 grand.
Works.
I don't even know what that just was. All right, but that's it. That's it for the video. Let me know what you guys thought. I mean, yo, Ben talks so fast. It's like hard to grasp it. Grasp fully what he's saying. You gotta like watch it over again. So yeah, but let me know what you thought about that. They didn't get to the crux of the issue. What is the main thing that differs Judaism and Christianity? It's Jesus, the view of the Messiah. How not even the view of the but what's before that is the view of Jesus, right? Because right? Yeah, how Jesus is looked at is what's the difference between Judaism and Christianity. And because from there, everything is cause and effect. Everything changes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. It's always nice seeing Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, both really intelligent people having a discussion. And shout out to the Rubin Report. I'm guessing this guy is Rubin for hosting this discussion. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. And I will see you guys later. Take care.